Thank you for joining us for our Educational Master Plan Town Hall, Campus Town Hall. Attendees are filtering now. My name's Tom Rizza. I'm the Public Information Officer here. I just want to thank everybody for joining us. Our hosts today will be President Angelica Garcia, Vice President of Instruction Cooney Hay, Vice President of Student Services Stacy Shears, Executive Assistant to the President, General Malari, Senior Research and Planning Analyst, Dr. Phoumy Sayavong, and Dr. Becky Gee, who is a chemistry instructor here and works in institutional effectiveness as a coordinator with us. And we are recording this meeting. I'm going to be posting a link in the chat where this meeting will be posted. It's under the institutional effectiveness button under the About BCC dropdown on the homepage for Berkeley City College. We will be taking questions throughout the meeting, and we'll also have time to live answer your questions at the end. If you could drop your questions in the Q&A box right at the bottom here, we will be able to answer your questions. And so with that, I'll move to President Garcia.
Great, thank you so much for that introduction and housekeeping. Good afternoon, buenas tardes, Berkeley City College community. We are thrilled to offer this Education Master Plan Campus Forum, so our EMP Campus Forum. And just to set a little bit of context, this has been a conversation, a theme that we have been discussing for the better part of what feels now like 3 semesters. And the work of revising or creating an EMP is the opportunity to shape the future of the BCC that we believe the community needs and deserves. And that process is one that can feel incredibly long and laborious. And you're going to see once Drs. Sayavong and Gee provide the first level of research that they have done, just how extensive it is to engage in environmental scan data, to what is it that we know about our community, and how is it that once we know that information, what do we do with it to ask ourselves critical questions about our programs, our services, and the kind of experience that Berkeley City College students, that we believe Berkeley City College students should have. All 4 colleges in the Peralta Community College District are in the process right now of creating the EMP at each of the 4 sites. The district office will then follow, and they have a district strategic plan, which will likely be heavily informed by the work that comes at the college level from this EMP. Now, this is but one of many plans that we need to revise for our institutional effectiveness efforts. It's one of many plans. Can you hear me okay still? Great. It's one of many plans that we have to pull together to make sure that we are addressing all of the standards, all of the requirements per accreditation, right? So for our status, but also it's just really good learning to ask ourselves these questions, to get to know our community again. What is it that we can ask from all aspects of the campus community about the Berkeley City College experience? So with that, I want to begin by thanking Drs. Sayavong and Gee, because they are really the bulk of this show. Dr. Shears and VPI Hay have been working very closely behind the scenes. And so we're going to be answering as many questions that may come up. And when you put them in the Q&A, we'll be able to respond to them and catalog them. And we're going to share everything back out along this recording and any questions that might come up. And then lastly, in closing, the College Roundtable just last week endorsed that we have an EMP steering committee. And so per that process, I've been in discussions with academic, classified, and associated student leadership to identify a representative from each of the constituency groups for this smaller team that will work hand in hand, primarily with Dr. Sayavong, with Phoumy, also Dr. Gee, and then myself, as we continue to just provide the timeline, the layout, the different ways in which you can engage this process. So with that, I want to pause for a moment and offer Dr. Shears and VPI Hay, if there are any comments that you would like to share before we turn the floor over to our phenomenal colleagues.
No, let's move on. This is great.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So Phoumy and Becky, take it away. We're so grateful to you and all the work that you have done to level out this presentation for us.
All right, thanks for the great introduction and welcome everyone. So glad you can be here with us on a Monday afternoon. Myself and Dr. Becky Gee will go over a lot of the preliminary stuff that we have found thus far based on the guidance of the president's cabinet and our thinking over the past summer. And I think the main point here would be a few things. One is that this is only the first step for us to help lead in the thinking of the educational master plan. And then whereas today is actually the start of inviting the whole community to provide feedback, participation, and many other methods of getting involved, because it is going to be a roadmap for the next 5 years. And for the master plan, for those who haven't seen it, it will cover. So when we say master plan, we're creating a roadmap for the next 5 years, starting in 2023 through 2027.
So some of the topics that we like to talk about today, actually share data information, are related to enrollment trends, demographics of Berkeley City College's K-12 feeder districts, information about living wages, gentrification in the East Bay, as well as poverty rates. We'll take a look at career and employment projections based on industry data, and then Phoumy will walk us through the educational master plan timeline. So maybe some background to put some context around the research that we're presenting. In June of this summer, President Garcia and her cabinet conducted a retreat, and they completed a Dream for BCC exercise in which participants suspended all rules and structures, and they reflected on the following prompts. What would it look like for BCC to continue to contribute to ending generational poverty in our local community? And what would it look like for BCC to reverse the impact of gentrification? So based on these prompts, Dr. Sayavong and myself conducted research through the lens of equity in ending poverty and gentrification. So during the cabinet retreat, they developed several different outcomes. So the outcomes included session themes, which included commitment to students, culturally and industrially relevant programs and services, developing collaborative community partnerships, or at least considering them, and then focusing on student access, success, and equitable outcomes. So additional topics that folks had discussed were especially access to higher wages or living wages, partnerships again with local industries, looking at student employee health, community partnerships again, and then developing a truly free-for-all college. So the cabinet also proposed some preliminary strategic priorities for our education master plan. They included student completion, teaching and learning, data-informed processes and innovations, themes around community partnerships, human capital development, fiscal sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the global community, and then advanced technology and facilities.
Okay, and the first item that we normally do as before we embark on on planning for the educational master plan is to look back patterns of enrollment, and for us, enrollment means more than just getting students into our college. It is accounting for those numbers for sure, but understanding the demographics of those students, who they are, where they're from, across many different dimensions. But we also keep track of how well they're doing throughout their time here. So starting off with just the headcount trend. So these are unique numbers of students who enter our college on an annual basis. And you can see that at the very top. And in between each of the academic years, I show you the percent increase or decrease. And of course, we started off with 1920 just as a reference for the pre-pandemic years. And also keep in mind there too that even back in 1920, our enrollment has already started to decline. So since then, we have seen a continuous pattern of decline, with the exception of 2021. That was somewhat of an outlier year. We see, for example, the headcount of students bump up by 4%. But the translation in terms of FTES, meaning the number of classes they were actually enrolled in, actually dropped by 12%. So yes, we had more unique students, but those students were enrolling in fewer classes. And we can see also in the decline of the percent of full-time students. And so from 11% in 1920 to 8% in 2021. And then in terms of overall enrollment, we also see continued decline 21-22 by 11% of unique students. And relative to them, we saw a 19% decline in their enrollment. But part of the good news here too is that some of those students are enrolling in more classes. So we're seeing the percent or proportion of students who are full-time come back up to 11%. And down below, we see a breakdown by gender. Those numbers hasn't shifted too drastically, but we do see a shift by 1 or 2% across the years. And we do examine our ethnic breakdown here because we are, for purposes of equity and many other type of services and instructions that we provide, we monitor this rather carefully. And more recently, back in 21-22, as of last academic year, we are seeing some shift in certain groups more than others. In this case, Latinx, our population has steadily grown for the past 5-6 years, and now they make up 29% of our student body. We are seeing another stand out a little bit for our Asian American students. We are seeing a drop of about 2% in the past couple of years. And also by age group. So although our traditional largest proportions, those are students ages between 20-24, tend to represent the highest proportion of students. We are seeing a nice bump of students who are 19 years old or less. And this is attributed to a lot of the dual enrollment efforts that we've worked on over the past few years. And they are showing pretty good progress despite the overall enrollment challenges that we had for our general student population. Sorry, I wonder if I skipped one. Okay. And looking at just fall enrollment trend of the past 4 years, here when we start to make comparisons, we are seeing some rather stark numbers. In this case, our unique headcount have decreased by 28% since fall 19. And that translates into the number of classes they're enrolled in declined by about 40%. And then the FTES that they generate, and FTES, by the way, means full-time equivalent students, declined by 38%. And so we see that the students' enrollment, and now we want to make sure that after they're enrolled, they persist, meaning they come back. If they're enrolled in fall, they would come back in spring, and we would hope they would also come back the following year in the next fall. So persistence from fall to spring on the left-hand side, we see also the rate of students coming back to our college on the decline. And likewise for fall to fall, more recently, the drop is all the way down to 28%. So it's one thing to get students in, but we also want to keep them coming back. And a special segment of our student population being first-time students, we also want to make sure that as they enter our college, of course, get the best support, get the best instruction, and persist. Here, we look at their persistence rate is slightly higher than the overall college at an average of 51%, but we also disaggregate that by ethnicity to make sure that there aren't gaps in the types of persistence rates across the different groups. And if there are, we want to make sure we highlight that, dig a little bit deeper to understand and provide the level of support that's needed to ensure that at least that they would persist along with all the other groups. But at the same time, the overall persistence of about 51% is still kind of, although low, it is part of a trend that's been going on for many years. And finally, if they persist, we also want to make sure they succeed. And at the very top, we want to make sure that students who are enrolling in their classes stay in their class. So then towards the very end of the semester. And so we call that retention. So they stay until the end of the semester, receive a grade, therefore the students are retained. And our average of retention has been in the 80%, high 80s, it's like low 80s. And then the line right below the retention would be the success rate. So in the most recent fiscal year 2022, so 85% of students were retained. Now, of those 85% of students, 68% passed their classes. And then at the very bottom, I just wanted to illustrate, even though they're not from the same population, over time, we are seeing a good proportion of students dropping out throughout the semester. So these are students who were not retained. So that is also something that we looked at and will be considering as we think about our Ed Master Plan. And looking at the same outcomes, but now disaggregated by gender, by age group, and by ethnicity. So the idea here is we want to make sure as we move forward, with identifying priorities or goals that we address any possible gaps that we see across these different outcomes. So this is an example of the level of analysis that we would conduct, and also have deep conversations on the instructional side, on the services side, to see where we can address some of these gaps. And for a lot of our students, BCC is known as a transfer college, and so we have done a really good job of ensuring that those who do want to transfer get to transfer, and our numbers are showing that. So here at the very top line is a combination of CSU, in-state private universities, out-of-state universities, and UC. So the combined total of transfer for 2 academic years ago was 599 transfers. Okay, back to Dr. Gee.
Thank you, Phoumy. So I'd like to talk about the research that Phoumy and I conducted over the summer that was prompted by President Garcia's cabinet retreat. We'll take a look at some of the service area demographics, future pipeline of students from our feeder schools, look also at poverty and living wages, career and employment projections, and then some summary from the research reports and literature about barriers to student success, and then gentrification as well. So just to put a little context, if we look at the far right side of the slide, what is it telling us? It's telling us within Alameda County, there are about 4,500 students who come from high school and then enroll in a community college. So of those 4,500, roughly 4,500 students, about 18% come from so-called feeder schools. So those are schools in the cities of Albany, Emeryville, Berkeley, and Oakland. So roughly 817 students per year from those 4 cities will enroll in a California community college. If we look at the number of those students who do attend a community college, what we're seeing on this graph is we're looking at the percentage of those students attending a community college who come from Albany, Berkeley, Emeryville, or Oakland, and they are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And so the definition of socioeconomically disadvantaged is that the student, is either eligible for free or reduced lunches, or they're a migrant, homeless, or foster youth, or neither of their parents graduated from high school. So we show the disaggregated results for all 4 cities. And you can see the number of percent of students who attend community college, they're largely from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. We also looked at the up and coming population of students who would potentially attend a community college. So what are we looking at? We are looking actually at the total number of population of students, for example, in grade 12. So if we look at year 2022, grade 12, those are the total number of students, again, from those 4 city school districts who have graduated grade 12. So for example, there are 1,000 African-American students who graduated in the year 2022. If we look at the next column over where it says year 2023, grade 11, and so on, that's the percent either decrease or increase relative to grade 12. So what does that mean? If we look at Asian students in year 2022, there are 615 students who graduated from grade 12, whereas in grade 11, there are 12% fewer students. So you can see there are largely a population decrease of students per year. The increases are shown in green. So this really speaks to the potential of the student pipeline coming directly from one of those 4 school districts.
And this is for kind of to match and coincide with the number of years for our Ed Master Plan, so ending in 2027.
Correct. There's also a lot of discussion about gentrification, especially how it's impacted the East Bay and potentially our students. So the map on the left comes from the Urban Displacement Project, which is run out of UC Berkeley and also the University of Toronto. What we're looking on at the left is any area that's shaded in purple to blue is an area that's impacted by gentrification. So dark purple means that that area has experienced advanced gentrification. And the area in blue means that that particular area is low income and susceptible to gentrification or displacement of its residents. What we also see in green is we've highlighted the university colleges, public housing in orange. So what does the map immediately reveal? A large area of the East Bay has already been subject to gentrification or is very much at risk to gentrification. Some nuggets of information. In 2018, over 10% of low-income households were at risk or currently experiencing gentrification, and that's specific to the Bay Area. Nearly half of the households live in either Alameda or San Francisco counties, and then ongoing and advanced gentrification is most prevalent in Alameda County as well as San Francisco. So we can see there's a large impact of gentrification across the East Bay, and of course then impacting our students.
And we've also included a few high schools just as an overlay to see where the high schools are located and at which degree of gentrification they're experiencing in and around their neighborhoods.
We also looked at poverty levels in the 4 neighboring school districts, again, Albany, Berkeley, Emeryville, and Oakland. And maybe if we focus our attention on the total population and we look at 2020, and at the very bottom row, we see that in 2020 for those 4 cities, we had a total population of about 598,000 residents. If we move to the far right side on the bottom right, in 2020, 15.4% of those residents were living below the poverty level. And so the US Census defines poverty. Their threshold is an income of roughly $17,000 per year for a 2-person household. So again, if we look at the far right column in 2020, we have the disaggregated data, the percent of the population that is living below the poverty level, which is again, roughly $17,400 per year for a 2-person household. We also wanted to highlight poverty level is very different than a living wage. So the second bullet point comes from the MIT living wage calculator. And there the folks at MIT determined that a living wage for folks in Alameda County is a little above $100,000 per year for 1 adult and 1 dependent, and that's before taxes. And another piece of data comes from the Insight Center for Community Economic Development, which is a nonprofit out of Oakland. Their calculator shows roughly the same. An adult plus 1 dependent requires at least around 100,000, in this case, $97,000 per year, and that's after taxes. So definitely there's a different, very different standard between living wage and poverty. And then we can see the poverty levels here on our slide on the far right column, the percent of the populations. So this slide illustrates kind of outcomes for the Berkeley City College community. If we focus on the top line, what we have is all completers. The number of students have completed a program here at Berkeley City College, and that's 972. If we move over to the right, what we see 42% of those completers were able to get a job with less than a bachelor's degree. However, if we look at the very far right side, we see that only 4%, in other words, 35% of those completers obtained a job that leads to a living wage with less than a bachelor's degree. And then below, we have the disaggregated data as well. We also looked at what are the median wages here in our area. And these are the earnings over the past 12 months. These are current dollars in 2022 dollars. If you focus your attention on the middle line, highlighted in yellow, it shows the median wage for someone who's earned an associate's degree or has some college. And if we look at, for example, which is focused on Berkeley, if you look at the line above it, the median wage for someone who graduates just from high school, it's about $33,000 a year. Less than high school, $23,000. Someone with a bachelor's, around $56,000. And then someone who has a graduate or professional degree, such as a medical degree, law school degree, it's roughly around $82,000 per year. So this is the middle or median wage for folks living in neighboring cities. So kind of in the backdrop of just seeing so few of our students kind of earning a living wage and concerned about poverty and gentrification, we took a look at careers and salaries and their projected growth, especially focused on folks who have an associate's degree or a certificate. So this information comes from the analysis of the US News. They took a look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and they reported out on the highest paying jobs for graduates with an associate's degree, and then the projected growth for that particular career through 2030. So if we focus on the top 5 lines, we could see that each of those careers have roughly anywhere from a 7 to 12% growth from now until 2030, and they pay roughly $50,000 to $52,000 $53,000 per year, and that's the median salary in 2020. If we go down and look at each of the careers, they're increasing in their median salary values and then have various projected growths. A quick glance kind of reveals a lot of the jobs are more technical in the science fields, but there definitely are some variations there as well. And then we continue with our list, the rest of the report that the US News had published. Again, we can see that a couple areas where there's high projected growth involved occupational therapy, respiratory therapy, as well as dental hygiene, and also web developers and digital interface designers. We also looked at an additional resource to look at careers and wages for, again, folks who have associate's degrees, and in this case, certificates. So we listed the top 10 jobs for someone who's received an associate's degree or certificate holder. The data comes from the California Community College Chancellor's Office. So this is the aggregated data for students across all of the state of California. And we're showing the median wage 5 years after someone who received either their certificate or degree. And surprising to me, the Chancellor's Office reported that these students who are receiving these salaries, they did not transfer to a four-year institution, and they're not enrolled currently in a California community college. And they were 21 or older at the time of the award. So some context there. But we can see right away is that, for example, physician's assistants, electrical systems and power transmissions, folks who are involved in those areas are making, $141,000 to $159,000 per year. That's the median wage. And then we can take a look at the folks who are working in electrical, educational technology are making at least above $100,000 per year, the ones who are reported there. So those are the top 5. And the remaining top 5 are these here on this list. So paramedics, medical sonography, fire technology, public works, and then surveying. So on average, or rather the median wage for folks who have received either a certificate or a associate's degree, in this case, all certificates, that's their reported median wage. We also divided that data into 3 different subcategories. We looked at folks who are receiving certificates or degrees in career education. And then obviously from the previous slides, we can tell the top 3 wage earners had all focused on a career education, being in electrical, educational technology, or electrical systems and power transmissions. What we have on the bottom line below is just FYI. My understanding is BCC has a very popular multimedia digital media program. This is the data reported by, again, the California Chancellor's Office regarding median wages 5 years after folks receive either an associate's degree, a locally approved certificate, or a chancellor's approved certificate. The next subcategory we looked at were the top 3 paying jobs for someone who received, again, associates or certificates in arts, humanities, social sciences, which is a very, very broad set of disciplines. But here we found the highest paying careers involved geographic information systems, so like mapping systems, someone who has studied economics or has studied speech communication. And then finally, we looked at the STEM fields, so science, technology, engineering, and math. The top 3 paying jobs with someone just with an associate's degree are here. So folks who studied either physics, biotechnology, or math. They've earned anywhere from are earning anywhere from $60,000 to $69,000 per year. And again, that's just the median wage. So this slide is showing us specifically the BCC populations. What associate's degrees do our BCC students tend to acquire? And it's disaggregated as well. But we could see, for example, if we just pick a line, 20% of Asian students will get a degree in the STEM field, 31% in business, 20% in arts and humanities, and 29% in education and some type of service degree. So we'll just leave this aside and let folks take a look at it, disaggregate it both by many different sliced in many different ways. So again, it gives us the percent of folks who are interested and graduate with associate's degrees in STEM, business, health, arts, humanities, and education services.
Yeah, so in respects to living wage or poverty level, we can also, this is also informative of the kind of areas where our students are going in. And in the previous few slides, we've been informed by the median wages that come out of these different types of areas that our students choose. So by disaggregating by into ethnicity, you can also see for some of the historically marginalized students, they do tend to major in the arts or humanities or education services. So just a few of the green arrows there highlight some of the biggest disparities in terms of the types of programs our students are choosing. So this is just to help highlight where some of the differences are.
Thank you, Phoumy. So we also looked to research reports as well as the research literature, various aspects that may kind of ground or inform the education master plan. We're interested in looking at non-academic obstacles that might be key drivers of dropout rates, especially for low-income students. So this report comes from a survey of 6,000 community college students from 10 community colleges in California and 8 other states, and was conducted by North Carolina State University. And below are the top 10 challenges that students face towards completing a junior college program. And so if we focus on the top 3, work. So students largely reported work is an obstacle, a non-academic obstacle to completing a program. Of those 34% of the students, the majority reported that work hours do not leave enough time for study. So 61% of those 34% report work hours do not leave them enough time to study, to do homework. The second largest non-academic obstacle is paying expenses. So students had challenges paying expenses. And of those 34% of students, 71% reported that they had challenges paying living expenses. So just merely paying living expenses. 58% reported they had trouble paying for books, software, other supplies. About half of those students reported they had challenges paying for tuition and fees. And I'm just going to mute something and then go back to the presentation. So if we go back to the previous slide for me, just one more quick point. And so 30% of the students reported they had difficulty balancing demands of family and college. So 30% there. Thank you. We also looked at online course success, right? With the pandemic and many of us moving our courses online, including me, just thinking about what's the impact of teaching online. So UC Davis had conducted a study. There's someone from the School of Education, one of their faculty members. They looked at an analysis of community college data. And their analysis reported on average, students have a poorer outcome in outline courses in terms of the likelihood of course completion with a passing grade and receiving an A or B. And that study suggested students are more likely to repeat courses taken online, but are less likely to take new courses in the same subject following the courses taken online. However, I think there is kind of a silver lining to this, something a little different, because Phoumy has some data specific to BCC that he'd like to highlight. Are you on mute, Phoumy?
Yeah, sorry. So here at BCC in the last academic year, our completion rate for online classes was actually 70%. versus 71% in the in-person classes. So I highlighted below a few groups that showed larger differences in terms of successful completion rates. So female students, for example, had a slightly larger range in terms of differences in their completion. So 70% completed online, successfully completed their courses online versus 75% in the in-person classes. White students also saw a 6% variance between the different modes of instruction. So that's 74% online versus 80% in person. And Pacific Islanders, although the number of students were fairly small, but we did see that the success rate in online courses was 55%, whereas it was 100% in the in-person classes.
Thanks, Phoumy. There was also discussion during the meeting about internships, right? So how are internships kind of, what are the impacts of internships? So we took a look at a couple of studies, one from the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They did a sample of over 12,000 college graduates from 2013 to 2015. And if we focus on the top bullet points, they pointed out that unpaid internships were correlated to positive outcomes when students thought about what kind of career they wanted to choose, as well as setting and attaining career goals, quality supervision, and networking. So unpaid internships were slightly more impactful than paid internships when, again, looking at quality supervision and networking. They also noted that unpaid internships were rated as being significantly beneficial to gains in understanding academic coursework, whereas paid internships were not rated as significant in understanding academic coursework. In a second study from the Journal of Education for Business, they sampled 579 graduating business seniors, and they noted that securing full-time employment is more positively related to having a paid internship. However, being self-employed is more positively related to having an unpaid internship. So we look at a broad swath of data. We also were asked to take a quick look at services and outcomes. How do services on community college campuses benefit students, or what are the outcomes there? So if we looked at the UC, all across California community colleges, as well as UC and CSU, there's limited data on mental health utilization and outcomes. Just some background, UC campuses collectively provide counseling services to about 34,000 students, about 12% of their UC enrollment. Community colleges recently began collecting utilization data, reporting about 59,000 students. 2% of all community college enrollments received mental health services in 2019-2020. And across the segments, there's still not a lot of data reported by the state of California. But there is some self-reported data, which I think we'll want to look at on the next slide. So this is self-reported data for counseling centers from community colleges. It comes from the Association for University and College Counseling Center Directors. Now, I may have misspoke. I'm not sure if it's just community colleges or across all colleges. But the most frequent concern for counseling centers were, the highest one was anxiety, depression, and then stress. So my interpretation, I think that means that the counseling centers were seeing a lot of students who were reporting anxiety, depression, and stress. Counseling centers, if you focus on the bottom part, they have had a positive impact on academics as measured by students self-reporting. So roughly 65 or 66% of students, in other words, clients, stated that the counseling services helped them with their academic performance. And then about 63% of clients or students stated that counseling services helped them stay in school. So the self-reported data is down below there. There's about 2/3 of students reporting that counseling services have helped them with academic performance as well as stay in school. onto a different topic, covering human capital development, just some key takeaways related to employee retention. In other words, keeping an employee within an organization. So we just merely looked at some benchmark statistics, which came from the Community and University Professional Association for Human Resources. And they looked at turnover, in other words, how frequently employees leave an organization. And they subcategorized it into exempt employees, and those are employees who receive salaries. Non-exempt employees, those are ones who work on hourly salaries, and then they subcategorize HR. But what they found is 12% of exempt employees at associates level institutions, there's a 12% turnover, whereas at other higher education institutions like four-year and university level with research, 13%. Non-exempt, there's 12% turnover at associates level institutions, whereas 16% at other higher ed institutions. And then HR, it's a roughly 11 to 9% turnover. So the second question, or along those lines of discussion, is, well, what entices or what helps employee retention? Why do employees want to stay in their organization? And so there are a lot of words on these slides, but I think they basically boil down to a couple things, a few things. And if we just focus on the top one, it's really, if we looked at faculty, the report noted that faculty who reported higher levels of support for innovation were less likely to indicate intentions to leave. If we target the second bullet point, it focused on why do employees actually leave an organization? Because they feel undervalued. And the last bullet point is, well, what's one way that you can prevent turnover? In addition just to making employees feel valued based on the other study, Ed News Daily reported, kind of wage concerns are always concerns of folks who may be thinking about leaving a role.
And now as we wind down our presentation, I want to give you a glimpse of the timeline for the completion of the Educational Master Plan. Here we see a timeline that was developed by WestEd, which is a organization that was hired by the district to help each of the colleges, including the district, complete our EMPs. And so there's a breakdown here, but what we're focused on here is towards the very end, where the final draft is intended to be shared between the months of March and May. And so, and with the end of May being the timeline for us to all the colleges to complete their EMP. And here are the types of support that WestEd will be providing us. And so we've already started the conversation with the staff or the team from WestEd. So essentially, for myself and others who will be part of the steering committee, we will then discuss which areas we might need more support on. And so they will be ready to support us with almost anything that we need. So yes, we've collected some of our own data, but they will also be helping to collect other types of data that we don't sometimes readily have access to. So they also have a lot of experience in collecting and conducting environmental scans. And so to that end, we want to thank everyone for participating in today's campus forum. We do have a website dedicated to just the planning for this next EMP. So it is embedded in our institutional planning webpage. You can leave feedback, comments, suggestions. And as we work through this, we will have multiple documents to share. And so this is also the location where you'll have access to all the different documents that we'll be discussing. Great, and at this point, we can maybe address some of the questions you might have.
And Phoumy,
Yes.
the date of the charrette, that's November 10th, correct? It's TBD right now, but I believe it's November 10th.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have the date to put in there yet. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sayavong and Dr. Gee for that presentation. It's about 4:24 right now. This meeting is open until 5 o'clock. We've answered a couple of questions in the Q&A box, but now we'll be equipped to answer your questions live. So if you could please drop your question in the Q&A box, we'll be happy to answer.
Tom, there's a question about right when the
Yes.
slides can be viewed. Do you want to answer that since we'll be?
Yes, Azul, Dr. Sayavong just sent over the slides to me at the head of this presentation. I will be posting it up on our website. The link I am dropping now into the chat is where both this webinar and the slides will be posted. You can also leave feedback on there and view past plans as well.
While we're waiting maybe for another question to come through, a couple of things that are happening simultaneously right now. There's a district meeting coordinating the EMP process across the 4 colleges and with the district. So that is happening. You just heard about the charrette that's happening in November. So that'll be important. We're getting a list of our community partners. So if you, based on where you sit at the college, have a connection with an industry partner, a community member, a community-based organization, a really engaged community member, parent, please, please, please do not hesitate to send that information. And right now I'm going to ask you to send that to Denelyn and to me so that we can make sure that when that official invite goes out for the charrettes, that your person or your recommendation gets included in that, because we definitely want to make sure that we have representation and folks from our community attending that. I know that there's been a little bit of a hubbub around why is it happening at Laney. One, it's considered to be more central, and 2, the capacity to hold more people is what has been noted as evidence. So we're going to have some folks that we're inviting from the city of Berkeley, the mayor, city council members, key workforce and industry partners, K through 12 partners. But again, if you have someone that you want to make sure voices in on the district-wide charrette, please don't hesitate to share that information with us. I have a question, even though I'm on the panel. Phoumy, I see that another question has just come in. Phoumy, is there a way for us to capture in the next steps? I know we have the EMP steering committee that the College Roundtable has activated. And so I've received some questions on, well, at what point do we get to weigh in on those preliminary goals for the EMP? And so I wanted to answer to that person that it would happen with the guidance of the EMP steering committee, but I know that you have been closest to this, Phoumy, over the last several semesters. I don't know if you have additional information to that response or not.
Yeah, part of that conversation in identifying or finalizing our priorities or set goals would be based on a lot more information that that we'll receive. So meaning we will start to identify all the different preliminary goals, and based on what we presented today, as you can tell, we did not conduct research on all of them. Because we just simply started. And so we'll continue to provide more information on all the other priorities, and then the steering committee will help us to either consolidate or remove, depending on all the other activities that we're also doing. So we're hoping to be guided by what the information that we receive, and then making projections whether any of the research that we've conducted so far would be convincing enough. So if we do attach ourselves to some of those findings, then that'll definitely help us solidify some of these goals. And then moving beyond the goals, we also need to set metrics as far as how we evaluate ourselves and how well we work towards those goals, because we do have 5 years. And so it's not that after our adoption of the goals that we are going to achieve 100% of the expectations within the first year. So it will be segmented throughout the 5 years.
There's a question or more of a comment that says, thank you for gathering and analyzing the data through a race-conscious framework. So certainly that is a collective effort from all parties thus far involved. But I think the actual manifestation of giving the data in this level has really come from Phoumy and Becky working so closely to try to answer those broader based questions of the realities that impact students in our community. I'm not seeing other questions in the chat. Is anyone else capturing any? Okay, well, if I may then, I know that Academic Senate has on their agenda this week about the EMP steering committee. So interested faculty members, tune into that discussion or certainly reach out to Matt if you're interested in joining this effort. And for classified professionals who might be interested in joining the EMP steering committee, please reach out to Andrea Williams, your classified Senate president, for that. And my understanding is that Mazen, ASBCC president, already has that on their meeting this Friday. So we should also be receiving the student appointee. Once we get set with that, I feel like things will just catapult a little bit faster into motion with the timelines and meetings and different methods of engagement to get input, especially as Phoumy shared on those themes, find out which ones we need to explore further, which ones maybe not so much, or are there some different ones that we have not yet considered? So thank you in advance to those of you who might be interested. And if you have questions, please reach out to your respective Senate leadership or to me. Happy to answer your questions as well. Tom, your mic is off. I'm not sure if you're speaking.
Yeah, it looks like Stacy is replying to this question, but it looks like Drew Gephert is interested in being included in the EMP planning. Maybe that's what you just went over, but yeah, if people are interested, how should they get involved?
I think that's a great question. And I know Stacy answered it. So now response will be available to everyone. Okay. Stacy, just to kind of put you on the spot a little bit here. So you're saying we're not sure if maybe Tomas is having.
Yeah, because international education is a district
got it,
function.
grouping.
So we're doing this with the district is doing a set, and then the colleges are doing a set. And so that might be covered in the district set.
Okay, if not, then let's make sure, because clearly our data show that we historically have had a significant portion of international students at BCC. So thank you for the question, Drew. We'll make sure that that does not fall through the cracks. Okay, Phoumy, do you have anything on your end to add from broader institutional effectiveness efforts?
Sure. I think one or two more things. We are going to get feedback from different focus groups also. So that's one other data point that we'll be using. So the steering committee will definitely get to hear a summary of the findings from that. And WestEd themselves will be conducting more analysis of the data, maybe other things too. And so they will also be providing additional information that's data and research. So there's a lot more for us to think about, and that's why our preliminary goals are simply that, because they can definitely change courses after we get more information back from these different entities.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. I think in one of the efforts to kind of maybe round out the beginnings of a closing is that hopefully in your various shared governance spaces, this particular topic about how your perspective group might be entertaining the questions and the themes that are coming out of the preliminary EMP scan. So would ask all of our colleagues who are chairs, co-chairs, tri-chairs of a respective governance committee to consider placing the topic of the EMP on the agenda, at minimum, just to say who was able to review it, and if not, how do you get the information on the link, the recording, the presentation, the questions, because it's possible that from a shared governance space, a particular committee on our campus might think about things a little bit differently and in a more focused way. So just ask, it would be great to see that these committees or department meetings would have this on the agenda. And certainly once the EMP steering committee is formed and launches, we will engage in regular communication, consultation, and input regarding the process, both what's happening at BCC and how we're working in collaboration with the district process as well. I really want to thank all of those for the last, it feels like a year almost, who've been working behind the scenes to get ready for this, but more specifically over these past months, Phoumy and Becky took open-ended questions and already did a preliminary but thorough environmental scan dive. I feel like they've given our West Ed colleagues a little bit of a head start to then go into more detail. And as Phoumy answered in a question earlier, to also engage our community partners in a way that Phoumy and Becky did not. They were just looking at available data sets in relation to the college. And the goal is to keep this up front and center. And if I may just take a personal point of privilege and say that, you know, I believe that our imagining and designing the future of BCC is as much for our colleagues and classified professionals and faculty and administrators as it is students. So it is both, how do we design a community college, or how do we think about our priorities in a way that really centers students' experience and engagement and learning, and also create a working environment where we love coming to work, where we love what we do, where we connect with one another, and we harness the very best of our community. So while it is student-centered, it is also community-centered for all of us. And so I'm very much looking forward to the process to see how we can continue to dream for the future of BCC and use this EMP as our guiding post for staying focused, especially when the road gets more challenging down the road. So those are my closing comments. Again, thank you, Phoumy and Becky, for your presentation, the VPs for helping answer questions. Denalyn behind the scenes, you're not seeing her, but she and Tom orchestrating this entire effort. So as noted, I'm going to turn it over to Tom for closing reminders on the recording of this webinar, where that can be found, as well as the presentation slides. Thank you all for joining us.
All right, thank you, President Garcia. Yes, I dropped a link in the chat. That's going to be the new landing page for the 2023 to 27 Educational Master Plan. If for some reason you lose this link, if you go to the Berkeley City College homepage, go to the About BCC button at the top of the screen there, and then scroll down into institutional effectiveness. You'll be able to find not only, and then from there into institutional planning, you'll be able to find this plan as well as the 2009 to 2015 plan. There will be information in there to leave feedback. The slides have already been uploaded onto this page. Once this meeting is over, I'll get to work adding the video recording of this meeting, and you should also expect communications from my office to the entire faculty and staff at the conclusion of this meeting. So appreciate those who were able to attend, and yeah, that's my piece.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.